Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Now, this was supposed to be a video released with a collaboration with another 3GS YouTuber. You probably know him. He's pretty goated. Definitely check him out. Now, the reason I'm releasing this part early and ruining the surprise is because Blender 5.0 came out, and a lot of the techniques that I used to model this scene is going to be outdated. They have a lot of modifiers here that would have definitely sped up the workflow a lot. Now, there are a lot of techniques I used that haven't changed, but I felt like if I just kept waiting to delay it longer, people might wonder why I'm still using a lot of old methods rather than some of the newer methods with Blender 5.0. So this isn't a step-by-step video. It was intended to be a step-by-step video, but now it's more of just like a technique video where you can like skip through and see how I think about stuff and then also how like I approach stuff. So just skip around in the video and probably find something you might like or might not like. Some of the stuff might be dated. There might be better ways to do it, but I still just want to release everything just so you have a reference if you want to. Per usual, you can get all the Blender source files for free in the links in the description or comment below. Yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into it. When it comes to complex shapes like these over here, I actually like to start with a curve, but I'm going to show you another really common way as well. Of course, there's multiple ways more than I'm showing, but I'm going to show the two ways that I would approach, a curvy like shape like this. So the first thing I would like to do is actually work with a curve, and I like to start not with a curve object, but actually a single vertice. So if you search up for add single vertice, you can add a single vertex. But in order to add a single vertex, you need this Blender add-on here called Extra Mesh Objects, which I used in previous videos. Really common, really popular. If you don't want to add a single vertice because you don't want to install an add-on, you can just Shift A and add a plane. So just add a plane. RY90, let's go into orthographic view. So I'm just going to click here. You can also use your numpad if you want to, but I'm just going to click this time. And you can go into edit mode, vertex mode, M, merge by distance. Merge at center. And now everything is into a single vertice. Again, make sure you're in vertex select over here. And now you can just extrude in like so, just like so. So actually, I just want to start from the center. So again, I'm just going to add a single vertice. Then I'm going to add a mirror modifier like so. I'm going to do it on the y-axis because I'm on the y. If you're on the x, whatever, you can do that as well. And then I'm just going to go into edit mode, go into vertex mode, and just E and start extruding. And whoops, I forgot that it's going to start like that. So we can just move it over to GY, move it over like that, and go back into object mode, GY, and just move that origin point right back there. Doesn't really matter if you want to do it to the side, that's fine as well. And now all you can do is just E and extrude and make the shape that you want. I want to turn on clipping so they don't go through each other. So I'm going to come over here and just turn that on like so, and then just get a general shape that I like. If you want to add more vertices, you can just use the standard Control R, and you can use your middle mouse button as well. So Control R, middle mouse button to add more, like so, just like so. Also, to quickly dissolve vertices, just do Control X like so, or Command X if you're in Mac. And for sharp corners like these, instead of Control R and adding your own things around here to adjust the angle, you can actually just bevel the vertices. So come over here, Control B. I think if you're on Mac, it's probably Command B. And then you hit V to bevel vertices, and you can use your middle mouse button to add more. And it's just a really quick way to smooth out vertices like so. And you can see now it's a lot more smooth. I can select multiple of them as well and do that. Control B, V, just bevel it out just a little bit like so. Now it's a little bit smooth like so. So really up to you there. And then another thing I like to use is loop tools, and this helps a lot. And it's one of the most popular Blender plugins on here. So you can right click loop tools and kind of do space, and it'll kind of space out your vertices a little bit evenly. Doesn't really matter, and if you have too many, as in they don't really adjust your shape too much, just keep doing Control X and adjust accordingly. GG to slide vertices along there just to adjust. You don't need too many, but it's kind of up to you. GG will just edge slide pretty much. And of course, always, you can always use proportional editing, to adjust, how your sphere of influence and things like that, just to get the shape that you like. And when you get a curve that you like, you can just do E, X, or whatever axis you're on, and then do A, and then Alt-E, extrude along normals. Now, if you're getting these messed up normals, just right-click cancel, do Shift-N, it'll recalculate your outside normals. You can do Alt-N to see that as well. And since it's just a single side, Blender's going to calculate accurately, but if the event that it's still not good, turn on face orientation to make sure that all the faces in one direction are, one color, if assuming that's the way that you want them to scale, and turn it off. Okay, so Alt-E extrude along normals, and just bring it down, and just like that. Now you might work with a lot of curvy objects that aren't easily extrudable this way, so I'm going to show you a convert to curve method as well that I'm going to be using. So we can do F3 and search for convert. So convert, and then just type in curve. You can see I don't actually have to spell it correctly. I just have to get the letters close enough to get it. And now we can just convert to curve. You can also see the actual menu option here called object convert. So if you come over here, object convert, you can also see this option here as well, but I just like to use the global menu because it's faster for me, but use whatever. So now that it becomes a curve, it now has curve data properties. We can come over here and come to extrude, and you can see that what it's going to do is extrude our curve for us, just like so. And once that looks good, you can still make edits here if you want. Another really awesome thing you can do with Blender curves is select a point and do Control T to tilt it, they call it, or twist it. And then you can do Alt S to scale it up there. So very, very convenient way to model something really cool. You can just do F3 and now convert to mesh like so. And now it becomes a mesh with something like this. And now what we can do is just go A, E, and extrude it along over there. And right click shade smooth, auto smooth, just to see how it looks. That looks pretty good. If you feel like you have too many loop cuts and they don't really contribute to your topology, you can just do Control X and dissolve some of them. This will save a little bit on memory. Of course, you don't have to go overboard about it or whatnot, but it's really up to you and how much you want. Also, if you want to work and adjust it later, maybe consider adding a bunch of control loops over here, just so you get some quad faces and quad topology. Again, you don't need so many. It's just up to whatever you want. So maybe you can select every other one here and dissolve them as well. But it's really up to you. You might not even have to add those control loops. It's up to what you want to do. And now what we can do is probably give it a bevel modifier like so. Turn up the segments, maybe like 3 or 4, and just bring down the amount a little bit. I'm holding shift so it's a little bit less tedious like so. Super, super cool. If you're still bothered a little bit by the low topology, of course you can always add a subdivision service with control 1 or control 2 levels, but we don't need that level of fidelity, so I'm going to get rid of that like so. This is more than enough over here. I will say if you want to go for the subdivision service route, like let me add a 2 over here, you probably want to lower your bevel quite a bit, and then this is the way to get like a really, really stylized look. And then you can probably just use one segment, honestly, and just get away with like a really, really stylized look. If you don't want to use bevel here, you can actually use shearing or weights instead. So you can come over here, select the edges that you want to come over here. You can see crease, I called it shear, and that's not right. Let me just deselect those and do Shift E is the hotkey here, and you can see it kind of goes over there, and now you kind of get a sharp over there. Of course, you can also adjust it as well, but I'm just going to be sticking with the bevel. And if you look a little bit closely, you can see a few shading issues over here, which is fine because we can just go to bevel, come into shading, and turn on harden normals, and that'll fix up some of our shading issues there. So of course the other way to approach this is another really common way. You can see these are literally, if I just shift deduplicate, these are literally just planes, right? So again, it's typically more common to bring in a reference and trace the reference rather than eyeball what we did. But here you can see these are literally just planes. So the other really common way is just to add a plane and start from a plane, right, RY90, scale it up, scale it down. And, just work from a plane, E extrude out and create your shape as well. Give it a mirror modifier like so, do it on the Y-axis, go into edit mode, GY, turn on clipping just like so, and do it accordingly. Pretty much the same thing, except you can do Control B to bevel instead, and you don't have to hit V, but it's essentially the same thing as starting with a curve instead. Another really, really common thing people like to do is hold Control. On Mac, it might be Command and right click to extrude, and it will like extrude to your cursor. There are some cases where I like doing that to extra extrude, but this is also some way you can just extrude into a general shape as well if you want to. That looks pretty cool actually, but yeah, whatever. Or you can just do the classic proportional editing, go add a plane, go into edit mode, maybe subdivide it a few times like so. Maybe one more time. Cool. Let's go into side view or orthographic view. Let's go into wireframe, just select that whole thing. GZ with proportional editing, just like so. Go into edit mode, AE extrude along normals. Cool, congrats, you got that. If it's a little too ridged, just add a subdivision service modifier. We can just change this to simple and apply that and right click shade auto smooth, and that looks. You might see a lot more non-traditional approaches, like where you add a plane and maybe add like a loop cut, maybe something like this, and maybe just bring this up, right, and then control B and then bevel it like here, or maybe let's select these two. It's effectively the same thing. You're pretty much doing the same thing, just in a different order. Here, right click, shade smooth, alt E, extrude along normals. Right here, sorry, shade auto smooth. Come over here, control L, copy modifiers, apply scale, just make sure it's accurate. Maybe turn it up. And then you effectively get the same thing here. So here, honestly, it's just order of operations. Pick your poison, lots of methods, and I will see you on the other side. Now, when you look at Japanese roofs, these aren't actually perfectly smooth lines. They're like cups. If you imagine, they're kind of like a little bit like so. You know, in a lot of stylized renders, this adds a lot of geometry. So it's like, do you even want to bother adding that or not? I'm going to show you a way if you don't want to bother adding that, and then another way if you do want to. So the really simple way, actually we could have saved our curve, but it doesn't really matter. We can just select one of these that we have over here. Again, if you have less loop cuts, doesn't really matter. You can shift deduplicate, right click cancel, P separate by selection, so it becomes its own mesh right over here. Now we can convert back to curve again. If we saved our old curve, we wouldn't have to do this step or whatever. And then we can just come over to bevel and just increase it up here. You can turn up the resolution if you wanted, but we probably don't need to. Shade smooth, and yeah, just adjust the depth accordingly. And then you can come over here, just do a ray modifier, and you know, move it across wherever you want. Now if you want to do it over here, maybe you have to shift and hold control and just kind of select every single one that you want, like a pole or something, and then you do the same thing, shift deduplicate, right click cancel, P separate by selection, then go back into object mode, F3 convert to curve, just like over here, same thing over here, and just bevel it up just like so. Now, if you ever want to adjust one side and affect it on the other side, since we have, you know, this center down here, you can always just go into wireframe right and delete this half and add a mirror modifier. But you don't actually have to do that. You can just use the mirror modifier out of the box. So if you come over to mirror modifier, I'm going to do Y again, bisect Y. You can see if I adjust one side over here, it's going to adjust the other side. Now, I don't like using bisect because it kind of adds like this sort of shadow over here, or like ghost. You can see even if I do flip Y, which shows there, now the ghost is on this side. It kind of shows you like the original one, which is a little bit odd to me. So if you apply mirror, you can see it effectively does the same thing. If you delete half of it and then add the mirror modifier, you're not going to get that ghost-like effect. So it's really up to you. Basically, bisect will just slice it down here or wherever your origin point is. My origin point's right in the center, so it doesn't really matter. And then flip just chooses which side it's cutting from, basically, you know, which side to keep. And when you want to make adjustments, you have so many options when it comes to your stylized scenes, right? You can just go for the default, hold Shift Alt and select some, and then scale with S. Now it's scaling, trying to get the center of them, which is why it's a little bit weird. So you can hit period and just switch to individual origins, or you can come up over here and use to transform pivot point to individual origins, and it'll just scale like so. Or you can maybe select every one that you want to be like a cup, and then do Control B just to bevel it a little bit, like so. Maybe Alt E, extrude along normals, bring it in a little bit, right click shade auto smooth, and that looks like a pretty cool roof. Or alternatively, for every one that you want to be like a cup, for example, you can just like I might dissolve that, it doesn't really matter. You can just like select every one that you want to be like a cup on over there. You can just like select some of these. So maybe I want these to be, and this is kind of like a long cup, but whatever. And then just do Control B, and we just need one, so just over here. And then what we can do is select every single one of these other ones, so maybe like something over here, like so. This seems pretty cool. Scale that down with S. Cool, and now we kind of have that cup shape, and then you can do GG just to slide out a little bit and then scale it down again. GG, slide out a little bit, scale it down a little bit again. Depends how sharp you want it. Scale it down, GG, maybe bring it up or scale it down, something like that. The shading is messed up. Right click, shade auto smooth. I also say you can see this is over here and empty. I forgot to turn on this thing here called fill caps, and it'll fill the caps for you in curve properties, but that's fine because now that it's an object, you can just come over here and hit F to fill. Again, we typically want to work in quads, so instead of just filling it with F, Control F, grid fill, and now you can see we have quad. You might have to play with the offset like so, but this is actually good for us. And there we have quad topology. If you're never adjusting that face, it's fine just to hit F and fill it like so. If you want to add some tiles, you can easily just select one of the sides, hold control to pick the shortest path. And maybe, actually, maybe that's not, maybe we can select over here, hold control and select the shortest path. hit E and then X and then just extrude outwards. Now I don't like this because you're extruding this over here, and maybe you want that, maybe that's fine. But instead you can just actually just select all of them, so you're not actually extruding that inset over there. And then you can just hit E and extrude on the X as well. And this is also an option to add tiles. Of course, now you have to adjust your factory slider, but it's pretty much the same thing. And at this point, when you start modeling, I always like to just bring up the shader editor, go into world over here, and I always like to just add the generic sky texture from Blender, plug it in over here, go into rendered view. I am in cycles using my GPU. Alternatively, if you want, you can go all the way back from the start and create the tile system at the start. And now you can just hit E and extrude out. Again, lock it on the x-axis for us. Hit Control Plus just to increase your selection. You can also come over here and do select. There should be select more. Yeah, select more. You can see it's Control Numpad Plus, Mac in my view command, and then if you don't have a numpad, just come over here and do that. And you can hit P separated by selection, so now it becomes its own thing, and then you can adjust the array if you want, or you can just leave it, as part of it and adjust the array anyway. So now you have the inner roof tile there, and you can just adjust the design if you want, or again, you can also separate it or whatnot. So those are really, really quick ways to make the tile. And if you don't want to make the tile as part of the roof and kind of just want a standalone, I mean, it's totally okay just to go into the roof itself, and let's go into local view and just select this, Control Shift left click this, and it'll select everything in between. Of course, since it's a box, you can easily just box select it, and that would work as well. And then here you can probably just Alt-E extrude along normals to make another side, or you can P separate by selection first. If you don't need anything else, you can just use this one, right, as the tile, just scale it up, Alt-E extrude along normals, like something like this, and no one can see the inside. Maybe move it down just to make sure no one can see it. The other really common way is, let's go into edit mode, again, select just this edge over here, Shift deduplicate, right click, cancel P separate by selection. Whoops, I accidentally weight paid, and I'm not going to bother undoing that because it doesn't matter. I'm going to convert it to a curve, and we're going to be using a curve modifier. And we want to set the origin point to the edge over here. So over here, Shift S, cursor to selected. And then we're going to hit Q, and we're going to do origin to 3D cursor. That's my quick favorites menu. Instead, you can right click origin, set origin to 3D cursor here, but you can also right click over here and add to quick favorites. I have removed because that's already added, but it's one of those that I always add in my quick favorites. So now what we can do is literally just make a cup. So we'll probably have a cylinder. That'll probably be the most common one. 18 vertices is fine. 16 should be fine too, honestly. I don't actually know. We don't need too much high resolution because we're not going to be close-ups. Right click shade auto smooth, you can see 16 is more than enough. And now what we should just be able to do is apply our scale. Let's do RX90 right over here, and we can just select this face and scale it down just like so. Now we should be able to give it an array modifier, and now we also want to give it a curve modifier, and we just want to select this right over here. And for some reason it's snapping over there. It doesn't really matter, and you can just hit control and use your middle mouse button to scroll through these until you get the accurate one. So it seems either Y or negative Y is going to be accurate for a curve modifier, and that makes sense because we're along the Y axis. Now we just need to adjust this, so I'm assuming it's going to be, okay, it's actually the Z in this case, so I'm just going to adjust that, and I'm just going to increase this just like so. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then you can add a mirror modifier, whatnot. And then as you adjust a curve, you're also adjusting that, right? So that's a really common way to do it. And with the tiles, you can effectively do the exact same thing. I'm actually going to get rid of the curve method and show you the last really, really common way. So again, if you want, I should have mentioned it last time, but you can also just create your tile system here as well. So you got that. And it's not even, that's fine. You can just do SX0 and it'll straighten it out just like so. So you can have that over there. If you want to make adjustments to your tile, by all means, totally go for it. And if you want to rip it, you can just come over here, hit V to rip vertices. So you can hit V and just, rip them out there, whichever vertices that you want to rip. So now they become independent of your pipe, and now it's just independent, but it's still part of your array modifier. So you can have like adjust here. Oh, I didn't remove this one either. I can hit V and rip it. But yeah, so that's also another way if you wanted to do that. But anyway, let me just keep it combined for now and show you the other way. So the other way is a little bit more destructive. I'm just going to add another array modifier and just increase it don't worry about the spacing, doesn't really matter. So the other way to do it is with a lattice modifier. So I'm going to shift right click somewhere in the center, and I'm going to add a lattice and just scale it accordingly across my object like so, SX. And then I'm going to come over here and give this a lattice modifier like so, right over here, and I'm just going to select my lattice over here. And now when I go into edit mode, you can see as I adjust my lattice, it's also going to adjust the structure here. Now for the lattice properties itself, you can increase the resolution. So if you want to bend it this way, like we do, we can just increase the resolution there. So now we can just maybe just select some of these, use proportional editing, and just rotate and adjust it like so. You might get a little bit of distortion. I mean, that's fine. Honestly, no one's going to be paying that much close of attention. You can see like it totally looks fine as well. Of course, you can always do the manual way. You can apply your modifiers, get rid of this lattice, and by all means, go into orthographic view and just use proportional editing to adjust your thing yourself. Super, totally valid way to do it as well. And if you want to give like the roof some decoration, there's lots of ways to do that. Maybe just hold control, pick the shortest path. Maybe P separate by selection, go into edit mode, E just extrude along like so, and there is that little gap there, so you can just hold Alt, select that loop, Alt S, extrude along the normals just to increase it just a little bit there. Or instead of P separate by selection, duplicate it first, so you do have a back face there if you wanted to make it smaller or whatnot. This is a nice roof decoration. If you want something over here, again, you can pick the shortest path like so. This is a box, so you can just go into side view and do box select as well. Come over here, go into checker deselect, and it'll select every single other one, and then you can just hit E and extrude outwards like so. Again, if you want, you can shift deduplicate, right click, cancel, P separate by selection, so now they become its own thing. If you want, you can just use one, right? And if you want, you can insert first, right? Or you can just select one, P separate by selection, so it becomes its own thing. If you want to leave the gap there, again, duplicate it, give it an array modifier and array it across the screen. If you want it a little bit up here, well, then that's fine as well. You can just hold control and like pick the ring that you want. So I think it's going to be up here. Let's go into local view just to see what we're selecting. Okay, so it's just going to be the ring. Again, here, I'm just going to P. Again, if you want to duplicate it first, you can totally do that. And then maybe now we just go into top view, wireframe, just select these and delete these faces like over here. So now we just have a bunch of these, and then we can just add an array modifier like so. Let's just increase that something like here, wherever you want, however many you want here. So it does seem like I'm overlapping. That's because I didn't delete these. So I'm just going to hold Control Shift and just delete those faces as well. And then for these, I'm just going to select these, hit F, and then I'll just select this edge and hit F, and it'll fill that for me. And then for these, I'll do the same thing, hit F to fill, and then Blender, just hit F again, and Blender will figure it out for you. And for these two, I should be able to do Control F grid fill, and no, because I have this right here, so I'm going to delete that edge right there. And if I hold Alt, I can't grid fill it because this place doesn't have a fill, so I can temporarily fill that. Then I can select this loop over here, Control F grid fill, and it'll fill it for me. And I can come back here and delete that face again if I want to. So now if I go back, we pretty much have a roof that looks like that. Obviously, that looks a little bit weird, but that's one way to do it. Again, if you just hit F to fill that entire loop, that would have been fine as well. But yeah, so you have a lot of options to decorate your roof. I'm just showing you a few ways that I'll be doing it as I'm decorating my roof. When it comes to these other shapes, like this sort of tapered roof sort of thing, just like this, honestly, it's also like a curved surface. So you can use every method that we used previously to actually build your house. But since it's like a rectangular or trapezoid sort of thing, I think it's less common to use that sort of method, but you can totally do that if you want. So I'm going to show you a more common method to approach trapezoid houses, but again, it's really up to your preference. So let's just come wherever, Shift A, add a plane, and just get it to whatever size you want. It doesn't really matter too much, but better to get the accurate size first. I'm just going to arbitrarily do it. I'm going to apply my scale, not that I need to do that. I'm just going to right click and subdivide a few times just so I get a grid-like shape. This might be too many, so I'm just going to stick with this. And I think I'm just going to Control Shift and select two corners to select everything in between. I'm going to hit O to turn on proportional editing. Let's just go to orthographic view and just bring it down like so. And you can adjust your sphere of influence to see how much it tapers the side like so. And of course, if you want the front a little bit more tapered, you can always just reduce your selection a little bit like so. And, increase the taper of that as well. Now we want the center to be a little bit raised, so we can select these SZ0. Oh, I don't want to turn on proportional editing. SZ0, I'll just flatten it along the Z-axis and just bring it up. And we still have that taper, by the way. It just looks a little bit like it's not because we just brought it up. But you can see the taper is unchanged along the edge over here. And of course, you can still make your adjustments with proportional editing after you're done, like so. And, you know, however you want to influence it, and maybe a little bit more taper on the side there. Or, yeah, so however you want to do it. Now, I don't like using this method because when you want to match up something later, it might be a little bit tedious, but it's totally okay if you want to do this method. There's probably nothing wrong with it, and it'll probably be just as fast as the other one. But in this case, I actually like to use the lattice modifier. That way, it's either easier to synergize when you add other extra ornaments. So I'm going to quickly reset it to its default state by just selecting everything with A and SZ0, and now just be there, Q, origin to geometry, and I'm going to show you the way with the lattice modifier. So let's shift A and add a lattice again. Same idea as other time, just scale it across just like so. Let's do control spacebar. Actually, I'm just going to close this because I don't need it anymore. And then we can just increase the resolution. Whoops, not that one. I guess I want to do it on the V here. Like so. Actually, I also want to do it on the U. That looks okay. I think I want to go one more that way, like so. That looks about right. And now we can do the same thing as last time, except we're going to do it to the lattice. Oh, sorry. I should probably give this a lattice modifier first. That would make more sense. Just select our lattice right there with the eyedropper tool. Sorry, whoops. I want to go into edit mode on this one. And we can just go into top view and just select the top vertices and the bottom. Those are fine as well. Again, just go to an orthographic view. Let's turn on these. Cool. GZ. And just bring it down with proportional editing. And you can see it's giving us the same exact result. And I forgot to mention it the other time, but you can also just alternatively select all the corners and GZ like so as well. If you want to increase the corners a little bit, that's also one way to do it. If you select the corners first, you might get a little bit of sharpness without proportional editing, so it's just easier to start from the center instead. But yeah, no, if you want to just select the corners, that's fine as well. But anyway, the benefit of this lattice now is if I come over here and I just add like a cube, for example, doesn't really matter to get like the undersides of the, how else do I explain it? Like the underside decorations of the Japanese roof. If I come over here and I give it an array modifier like we did the other time, so it's going to be in the y-axis this time. I'm just going to increase it arbitrarily, like so. And then again, we give it the same lattice modifier, so lattice, and we give it the same lattice. Take a look at this. It's actually going to take the same sort of shape as our taper over here. And now all I have to do is just adjust this, and it will adjust the taper not only for this over here, but also for my undercarriage decoration. Super, super cool, just like that. And that's kind of like the benefit of a lattice modifier here. You can do the same result with a curve modifier as well, and just adjust the curve and adjust everything. You could also do like parenting and other things like that, but for us, I feel like the lattice is a better option here. Whenever you're ready, you can just go into edit mode, maybe start over here, and just extrude upwards, scale it down, extrude upwards, and you know, just make the shape that you want. Adjust it accordingly, turn on proportional editing if you want. Looks a little bit messed up because we have shade smooth on. I'm going to right click shade auto smooth. Okay, let's just make sure to apply our scale in case we scaled it in object mode. And now we can just add a solidify modifier. Solidify is one of the few modifiers that are affected by the scale. Even thickness, I don't think that changes anything for us here. And yeah, it doesn't. So we can just add that really quickly. You can also just go into edit mode, Alt E, and extrude along normals without the solidify. Up to you there. And then maybe now what we can do is add a slight bevel over here, apply our scale, maybe turn up segments to like 3 or something, and then just bring that down just a little bit. And if you don't like it where some are beveling more than others, you can use, instead of angle, you can do weight. And now you can go into edit mode, and under item, you can see this thing called mean bevel weight. And every edge that you give a mean increase the bevel weight, it's going to be more beveled than the other ones. You can see down here it's completely sharp, whereas on the top where I give it a, you know, an increase of the mean bevel weight, it's fully beveled. So you can do that to, you know, adjust where you want more bevels if you want. And also I just undid everything because I accidentally made it a little bit too steep, and it's better just to start over rather than start from too steep. So I'm just going to bring this up. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. And then now I'm going to extrude up and a little bit. Sometimes it's better just to start over rather than fix your original object. Yeah, and that's definitely what I expect more to the level amount of slope and things like that. Now you will see there's a slight shading issue that's probably not going to make a big deal for us. And it's probably because of this large face over here that's kind of like being stretched and these having an edge. So what you can do is just hit K for a knife tool, select over here, and then select this other edge and hit spacebar to confirm it after the left click, and you can see that shading issue has been resolved, and now we can have a more defined corner here. Now we are working with tries here, but in this case it's perfectly fine just to have a try. And of course we don't want to waste our time doing this on all four sides, so what we can do is, since it's all symmetrical, we can just go into top view and let's just piece separate by selection, and let's just delete the rest of this. Again, make sure your origin point is at the center, so before you delete everything, sorry, what I should have done, and before I separated, we should do Q. Well, let's go to object mode, Q origin to geometry, so it's in the center of our geometry. Now we can just piece separate by selection, or if you get all of them already, then all you have to do is just Control I and delete those vertices. Same deal over here, and now you can just add a mirror modifier and do it on the X and Y axes, and you effectively have the same thing on all four sides. Again, make sure you turn on clipping so you can't go through. And now you're all good and set to go. It will update on just like so. Super, super cool. You could do the bisect thing, but I don't like seeing the ghosts, so I'm just gonna delete it instead. Great thing about this now is you can just use this edge like here, shift D, duplicate, right click, cancel, piece separated by selection, and now you can just select this, go into edit mode, hit A to select everything, E and Z to scale it up a little bit, and then you can just select either side, doesn't really matter, and just hit E, and then you can just type like 0.1 or something, and then on this other side you can do the same thing, E and then 0.1. That way you know you have it even on both sides. And then if you want to, you can just shift control just like so, and then just do alt S and just scale it until you get like a shape that you like. Super cool. And you know, if you want to add loop cuts, you can totally do that, right? And just adjust the shape along your curve over there, and then GZ, and just scale it down a little bit like so. If you want, you can dissolve this middle loop cut here with Control X, and then you just have this again. Just add a subdivision surface if you want to, bevel, whatever, and it's all in quads, so it's great. You know, it's exactly what it's supposed to be. And then shading, let's turn on harden normals again. Super cool. I mean, at this point, it's just the world is your oyster. Maybe add like a loop cut over here and like extrude this one. Select these over here, GG, edge slide it, bring it down. Like, I mean, at this point, you just have total control what you want to do. It's going to be just quad modeling for this. By the way, quick tip, if you do GG for edge slide and you can't go the other way, then hit C to unclamp it, and you can edge slide across or over the thing over there. And that's a really, really nice trick over there as well. Another thing you can do is actually convert this to a curve. So I'm going to convert it to a curve. And now when you have a curve, you can, instead of using the bevel round, you can actually use another curve object as your object here. So you can start with a mesh. I like to start with a mesh. So I'm just going to start with a plane here. So maybe like this, for example. And then maybe I'll go over here and just do Control B and then V to bevel it, and just kind of over here. Maybe some sort of shape like that. And then I'm just going to select this and delete the face. Here we want to do only faces, so we keep the outside ring over here. Whoops, I'm in edit mode, so it's not showing up. So let's go back to object mode, convert to curve. And now we can just select this, come over here, object, and select this object over here. And now it's going to go like this. So it's a little bit rotated right now. That's all good. All we have to do is just go into edit mode and RZ90 and just rotate that 90 degrees. Now we can just scale it here and adjust it here, and then fill caps. And then now we just have, you know, something that follows along our curve over here that we can just attach right there. And of course you can always duplicate it, Shift D, and then just change the object and keep on continuing from there as well. For this triangle part over here, where it comes like to a triangle taper, what you can do is add a secondary mesh on top if you want to, or you can just come with your existing one. If you want, I think we could just piece separate by selection and then work from this if you wanted to. I think I'll just leave it connected for now, and I'll just select it, E, and extrude it up. And since it's going to be a triangle, we can just select this over here and just do GZ and move it up a little bit. Maybe we can turn on proportional editing over here. It probably won't change. Actually, I don't want it to influence. We can just manually do it this time. And let me hit O to turn off proportional editing. And then this is a little bit too sharp, so maybe we can just do GZ and just bring it down. GZ, bring it down, you know, to a shape. And honestly, that's pretty good. I don't think we actually need this face at all because it'll be covered. So we can actually just simplify it. Select these. Let's go over here and turn on snapping for edge, face, and vertex. We can hold shift and activate multiple. That will be triggered. So we just need vertex here, but I'm activating all the other ones so we can use them later. G, Z, and just come over here. Now they're overlapping, but we can just do merge by distance like so. If I go into local view, you can see this is kind of what we have right now. And I think that is more than fine for what we're going for. And then maybe we can give the top a little bit of a taper. So I'm just going to GG slide these a little bit. GG slide it just a little. Sweet. And now it's a little bit tapered in the center over there. If for some off chance you want the quad topology back over here, I think the easiest way is just to actually just delete these and just extrude from over here. So I'm just going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to hit E and then just hit S automatically instead of G to extrude it. And we're going to lose that sharp edge again because we need to GZ and bring maybe just a little bit more so like so. And there we pretty much have the same exact thing that we had before, but now we have quad faces over here and we can add like a loop cut through there. Before we had a diagonal. Again, we got rid of the quad face here, so you can't add a loop cut over here, but again, for us, having a try here is perfectly fine there as well. Again, if you want to rebuild your edge, you can do that. Again, same thing that we did last time. Shift deduplicate, right click, cancel, P separate by selection. Go into edit mode and E and extrude it upwards. And then you can build it. So maybe this one you want to build separately. So you can P separate by selection. And now you have one over here, right? And then you also have the one over here that you can build. So that is going to be there. And now that I look at this curve, I feel like it's a little bit too tapered and looks a little bit wonky. So I'm going to fix that just by selecting over here. And probably I'm just going to do SY0. And I'm just going to make them completely flat there. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist, and have some fun. When it comes to things like this, which is like actually part of the roof, but also protruding at the same time, this is like a standalone protrusion. This is like part of the flow of the thing itself, of the roof itself. Like ideally, yeah, it would be part of the object itself, but that would require a lot of topology cleanup and extra time. Honestly, it would just be easier if we did a separate mesh, so that's going to be the approach that I'm going to be going for when creating this. And of course, the most obvious way to do that is probably just like select some of these, shift deduplicate, right click, cancel, P separate by selection, so it becomes its own thing, and then just EX, right, and then SX0, and then just shape this into a triangle. And that'll be pretty much good enough, honestly, right? And then here, I think we can just snap to the surface here, honestly. And then we can do a little bit of cleanup. So maybe we can turn this GY, maybe add one more loop cut here. Do GY. Let's just go into orthographic view. Yeah, this is kind of like out here. So maybe we can do a GG edge slide over here. Or maybe like a GY and just like bring it in. Same with here. So it's kind of like GY. And it's actually because I think this isn't even. So I'll do SZ0 just to kind of straighten that out a little bit. Yeah, and now we kind of have like a more triangle. So from the front, yeah, okay, now it kind of looks like a triangle. And GX, just move it out a little bit so it's kind of like that. And then if we go into rendered view, let's see, rendered view, it does look like there's some sort of small gap. Honestly, we can just increase this right here. Why not? Cool, and now the gap is gone, and that's pretty good. And then we also have full control over this because we can just like increase it whenever we want and you know, adjust it here. So it's a lot more flexible this way. Also great time to start cleaning up this if you want to, like selecting this SY0 or something. This one's going to affect the taper, so maybe you don't want to polish that one up. And then maybe for this corner over here, we can do right click loop tools and do G stretch. You can adjust the influence here, but I'm going to leave it at 100%. And we are having this blend in here because it's not angled. So you can either just move this up until it's sharp again and move this one up again. So we get the sharp corner again. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just come down here and the auto smooth, we can just bring that down a little bit. And you can see now it's bringing back there. Or if you want, instead, you can leave it at 30 and then just select this edge, Control E, and do mark sharp. And now you can see it's going to respect that sharp edge that we marked. Or you can see if I hit ignore sharpness, it's going to ignore that just where it was previously. Or you can just mark it sharp and it'll respect it just like so. So many options there for that. For the side here, I'm just going to select this. I'm going to hit I to inset it just a little bit. I want to make the ridges a little bit thicker, so I'm going to select these GZ. I'm going to select these and just do GZ as well, and then I'll just move this GX a little bit like so. So a little bit thicker on the ridges. I'm going to delete this face actually, and then GX and slam those together. I'm going to hit E and extrude in just a little bit. I'm going to hit I again for an inset, just a small one this time. I'm going to delete this face again. I'm going to select this GX, slam that together. And this time, I think all I'm going to do is just E and extrude that in there. And now we kind of have like this sort of thing. You will see me add a bunch of extra decorations and go through a variety of different ones. I'm not going to show all of that in this video, primarily because a lot of them are very, very simple models. And I covered these techniques in previous videos, and I don't want to like keep repeating old things in every single video. I highly encourage you to look up like Japanese architecture terms and just see, take inspiration from the internet, like some of these emblems over here, some family crests, things like that. Also, even just, for traditional Japanese house, you can see some parts of that. Design is all about trial and error at a certain point, so don't be afraid to fail and try and fail and try and fail over again until something looks good. That's pretty much all I do as well. Now I want to add a little bit of thickness, so I'm going to go in local view here, and I think I'm just going to select, I don't know if I need this many deep. I think I only need this layer of deep, and everything else will just be covered. So let me just select these over here, just like so, and I'm just going to hit Alt-E, extrude along normals, just like so. And I think I'm just going to hit S and just scale it in just a little bit. Cool. And then I think I want one more layer, but I don't want it I don't want all that extra geometry, so I'm just going to fabricate it with 2 loop cuts over here, and that's fine. And then I'm going to do GG and move this up here, and I'm just going to select this, I can actually just hit Alt and it'll get the loop there. And then I'm going to hit Alt-E, extrude along normals on this one as well. So we have that one more layer of inner decoration, right? And it looks like this is, let me see, right click, shade, auto smooth. Okay, I think I accidentally had shade flat on for some reason. Yes. By the way, you don't have to use the inset method and delete stuff. You can actually just like pretty much create your own inset, right? You can add like a loop cut, just bring it to the side and add another loop cut over here, just make it really thin, something like this. And maybe I'll just, I think I'll select these in GY, just move it a little bit, just like so. And now let's go into local view, and let's just make sure this back stuff is deleted because we'll never see that. So let's just come over here. Whoops. Let's just come over here and delete those faces, and here as well we can delete those faces, and then just hit E and extrude inwards. Maybe that's a little bit too much. GX, just like so. Bring it out. Cool. And then we got this just like so. Because we aligned it, it's kind of like going inside a little bit, so maybe you don't want that. I think that's fine for me. I'm just going to go into wireframe, delete these faces because we don't need it, and this will be fine for what I'm going for. Or you can just select the ring out here, right, and then just E and extrude it out this way, and that way you don't have to deal with the alignment issue here and whatnot. Another thing I like doing is adding temporary cuts, so like I'll just knife tool with K over here, and then just hit spacebar to confirm SY0 so it's aligned. And I'm just going to GY and align it to this vertex. And then now I can just select this, Shift D duplicate, right click, cancel, piece separate by selection. And now I have this thing over here that I can adjust with if I want. And I can go back over here, go into local view, just select this again and Control X and dissolve that right there. So there we have that. Okay, at this point, you can either go realism or you can go stylized. I'm going to start converting to stylized now, but you can continue on with realism if you want to. But most of the techniques are pretty much the same. And if there are other techniques, I will be showing you throughout this video, so you can apply it to your own project as well. So before I move on, I just want to quickly talk about how I come up with my own concepts, just a little bit in brief, because a lot of people are always like, hey, I'm not creative, I'm not a good designer, what do I do? And quite honestly, I wasn't a great designer either, or a great 3D modeler, and I'm still probably not special at all. All I literally do, or what a lot of artists will tell you to do, is just collect some references, and it doesn't even have to be related to what you want to do. Typically it is, but it doesn't always have to be. And then you just take bits and pieces of that and jam them together. Like, just looking here, I see this really, really cool, interesting intro thing right here that I really like. I also like how it has like this second floor and like some stairs up on the side that go up to the second floor. And then looking at another reference over here, I really love how this has some sort of water here. So why don't I take my shape, which kind of looks like one of these, right? combine it with something like this for the bottom as well as the top. And then for the background, like the ground over here, why don't I use this sort of pattern here where it's like grass and then some water. So here you can see I just have 3 references and I just combine different parts of the references to create a scene. And the rest from here is just trial and error until it looks good. In all of these though, one thing you can see that is consistent in stylized scenes is that the tiles are definitely a lot bigger than real life proportionally to the rest of the building. And that makes sense for stylized scenes. You can see all of these are definitely more proportionally bigger than you'd expect in real life. So now we have a lot of options. We can start with 1, make the ground. We can start with 2, stylizing some of our assets. Or 3, starting with, splitting it up. And then we can just keep rotating back and forth until something looks good. Okay, so let's come back in here and maybe let's start with the pond. So what I'm going to do is select my plane over here, Shift A, apply my scale. And then I'm just going to do Control 4 to add a subdivision surface modifier. I'm going to turn this to simple because I don't think I want it to affect the shape. And I'm just going to apply that. And here we kind of have something like this. I think maybe I'm going to right click and subdivide it one more time. Actually, I'm going to subdivide it one more time. And that seems a little bit better. Cool. And now I'm just going to select some areas that I might want my pond to be around, so maybe a little bit under. Maybe I want it to go under my restaurant as well and then have like a path up here. And with that done, I'll just E and extrude downwards, and then I'm going to add another subdivision surface and shade smooth just like so. I think 1 should be fine. Okay, 2, so I'll just add another Control 2 subdivision. Maybe now we can work on the intro, so I'm just going to shift right click somewhere arbitrarily and add a cube just like so. If you have the Boolean tools modifier add-on, so bool tools like so, you can just select your cutout object, then the one you want to cut out of, Control, numpad minus, just like so, and you can see it already sets up a Boolean modifier for us by default, and we can just cut out that intro just like the other one, just like so, and GX, just move it in there, and there we kind of have already a start of our cool little intro restaurant thingy. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't really have to be special or anything. I think I'm actually going to delete these, or I'm going to save these actually and move it into a new collection just for temporary purposes if I ever need them in case. Again, and then maybe, now you want to, let's just move it to collection 4. Maybe now we know we want to keep this stylized, right? So why don't we just expand it and make it stylized? Here is the start of our stylization. We're making it a lot bigger, a lot bulkier, and a lot more cool, just like so. I'll also say stylized scenes very rarely have like very, very subtle details like this. So I don't think we actually need it. So I'm going to select this, Shift G, select similar coplanar, and I'll select all the faces that are like flat together. Now I also want to select these. So I could just select one on each of them, Shift G, and select coplanar, and then increase my selection with Control Plus. And then probably deselect these, and then I could do Shift Alt and select this, and that's one way to do it. Or you can just select this, Shift G, select similar coplanar, and maybe we can change the threshold to like 0.1. Cool. And then now we can just do hold Alt and select those as well. So multiple ways to select those, and then we can actually just delete these faces. Cool. And now we're back to where we started. We can just select these, hit F to fill. Same thing. This is what we had originally. So now we're just back to the start. Again, I do love the idea of having a little mini restaurant up here. So I think what we can do is actually select this loop and we hit V, and I'm just going to right click cancel that. I'm going to select this, hit L, and I'm going to P separate by selection so it becomes its own object. And I'm just going to bring it up because this is where our restaurant's going to start. And now maybe we can start making our floor. So if you want to, you can apply the lattice and the mirror and then just fill the faces now. Or you can just, I guess, just do it manually. So we can hit E and extrude out, E extrude out, E extrude out, like so. Just let it clip in there. And then here we can just merge these. Merge by at center, merge at center, merge at center. Cool, so there we have a floor now. We're back to where we started actually. But yeah, that's one way to refill it. And then maybe we can start with our stuff, right? So maybe we can shifty duplicate this, and I'm actually just going to P separate by selection. In this case, I'm going to Q origin to geometry like so. And the lattice is glitching it out, but it doesn't really matter. And for the mirror, I'm actually going to select this house object. So it effectively does the same thing, except we have a decent origin point now. And now I can just hit E and extrude upwards. And then, yeah, I'm just going to Alt S and scale it. And then I'm just going to SY0 to completely flatten that. Also made these a little bit larger, and then I gave everything bevel modifiers just to get into the stylized scene. You can also start deleting things that are kind of obvious that you'll never need them, like these over here. They'll be covered by the top and bottom, so you can just delete those now. And right now you might be looking at this and you're like, dude, that doesn't really look that good. And you'd be correct, but that's actually part of the fun. So it's like, instead of just like you know, like doom scrolling, or you know how addictive that is, or using AI for validation or things like that, you can like spend time just trial and error. And this actually really helps with your design intuition and everything. Whenever you're in creative block, I think the easiest way to get out of it is literally just to do something you would never consider and then try working with it. And you might have to go back several times, and you might have to redo it several times. And that's honestly really part of the process. So I'm kind of having a creative block right now, but I just made that a little bit bigger. And honestly, it actually starts working. So maybe we can just like build off of that. And I think what we can do is probably just select this, shift deduplicate, right click cancel, be separated by selection. And now we have this, and I can just E and lock it on the Y axis. And now I can Alt E extrude along normals. Cool. Cool. And you know, we're getting somewhere now. We're getting somewhere. We are getting somewhere. I might be creative blocked, but we are getting somewhere. Yeah, I mean, it's really just about having fun and trying stuff. And I just made it a lot bigger, but it's definitely looking a lot cuter. I'm gonna do Alt S and just scale it along the normal just a little bit. So we have something there. And instead of small tiles, why don't we go for really, really large tiles? So maybe we can do that. Maybe we can add like, I don't know, maybe we can add like a cylinder over here. Let's see how many vertices we got. We got 32. That may be a little bit too many. I think 16 should be good enough for us. Let's just go into top view. Let's go into edit mode. Let's go into wireframe, and let's delete those vertices. Let's come over here. Let's do Alt E, extrude along normals just like that. And this is going to be one of our roof tiles. Super, super cool. And one thing is, like, I'm going to right click shade auto smooth, so we have like some roof tiles there. Another really cool thing is, like, you don't actually have to constrain yourself to best practices and everything. Like, if you want to, like, honestly, just do it the manual way and have fun with that. Like having fun is literally your mantra. So now we need some roof tiles, so maybe we can just make some roof tiles. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but we are having fun, and that's all that matters. So maybe we can just let's see, move this over here like so, and we can just add some loop cuts. So maybe 3 loop cuts, and we'll just select this one over here, GX, and just make some cool, cute roof tiles just like so. And then E and extrude that. Let's apply our scale here. And then let's copy one of these bevel modifiers over here. So I'm just going to copy over, copy to selected. Super cool. I'm going to right click, shade auto smooth. By the way, for the bevel modifiers, I did change it to arc, and I also turned on harden normals to fix those shading issues. Sometimes sharp is actually better, but for most cases, arc is going to be better topology. Now you can just have fun. So I'm gonna add like an array modifier, maybe something like this. Maybe let's increase this one over here, and then we can add another array modifier, and then this one like so. That's pretty cool. And we can just have these massive tiles. And again, you don't have to be perfect. You can just do it manually. Like, I did show you proper methods earlier, but you know, why bother with proper methods when you can just have fun and do it manually? So let's add some more over here, and the spacing for the tile looks a little bit too big, but we can figure that out ourselves. I'm going to shift S, cursor to selected, GY, scale that down, and just make our tile in there as well. And I'm just going to come over here, Control L, and I'll do copy modifiers just over there. And it seems like this one is wrong, so I'm going to get rid of that and then just factor it on the X over here. And there we have the start of our stylized roof, and it actually looks pretty good. And now it's like, oh, I don't know what to put on the side of my roof, but I see this really cool thing. Why don't I just copy that and put it in my design as well? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to Shift A, and I'm going to add a circle. I don't think we need 32. We can just type in 16, and then we can do RX at 90. Just scale it down just like so. Let's go into edit mode. Let's go into vertex. Let's do EY. Just scale it up there. Sorry, extrude it out there. Then we can do E, do S, and then we can do EY, and then we can do ES again, and then we can do EY again, just like so, and then we can probably hit F and just fill it. If you need to, you can do grid fill and play around with this in the event that you're getting shady issues, but I don't think we need that, so I can just stick with an F, a typical flat face F right there. And now we pretty much have this. So I can just scale it on the y-axis, right click, shade, auto smooth. And if you want those little grids in there, it's very simple. You can just come over here, select these, Control E, bridge edge loops. Same thing with this one over here, Control E, bridge edge loops, or E, bridge edge loops. And when you're all done with them, hold Alt and Shift and select each one of these and do P and separate by selection. So just so they become their own little object. And I think I actually want these as their separate object as well. And that way you have more flexibility here. I'm just going to move that in just like so. Now you can see there's a slight hole here because when we separated by selection or bridge edge loops, it doesn't create a face here. So we can just create a face on this one. We don't have to fill the other hole because it's being covered. Cool, and now we patched up all the holes except the ones that we don't need. And of course, we don't need the back faces of these either. So let's go into local view, select one, shift G, select somewhere normal, and let's delete those faces just like so. And now we have that. Also, another really quick tip, even if your numbers are different on a lot of these modifiers, you can hold Alt with both of them selected and it will actually still update. You can see this one, I have 12 count here, whereas this one is at 11. But if I hold shift select both of them and hold Alt and keep on increasing them, you can see that they're going to still increase incrementally by 1. And here, even just to prove that, if I change this to like 19 and select both of them, then hold Alt, it's still going to increment this other one as well for me. And of course, you can do that with all your other ones, right? Like you can adjust both their bevel modifiers at the same time, holding down Alt and everything. So, and of course, if you do want it the same, then you can just hold Alt and then type a value, and then like 5, hold Alt, and then hit Enter. And now both of them are going to have 5. You can see just like that. Super cool trick there. Also, if you're using the array modifier method that I'm using, you can also just give that the lattice modifier that you did originally. So here, just copy to selected, and I'm just going to bring that up. You might have to make a few adjustments, but this also follows the lattice. Anyway, when you're done with everything, you can just F3 convert to mesh. That they're a mesh, we can select these, and what I want to do now is get rid of this over extra stuff. So we can go into local view, of course, and then go into top view. Then we can join these together as a single object. Yes, ideally before you apply your array modifier, you should remove all these extra faces that won't be seen. So maybe like the undersides or whatever. I didn't do that, but you know, just something to keep in mind when you're going through. And then now we can just go into edit mode since this is all a single object. Go into wireframe, hit K for the knife tool, and we just select a point over here, and I'm just tracing along this edge over here. And we want to hit C so it cuts through our object instead of just on the top. And then we can just select an endpoint like here, and then hit spacebar to confirm. And now I'm just going to deselect that because I don't want to select it. And then I'm going to hit C for the circle tool, and then just delete all the vertices on the other side of where we made our cut. So something like this, I'm just going to delete those vertices. And now, if I go back out, you can see we have this sort of thing here. If you don't like how you have like partial geometries, because it does really look messed up like this, if you don't really like the partial thing, you can use full objects and just manually adjust it and snap it. But at the same time, if that takes away from your fun, I just recommend leaving the sloppy geometry in. So what now? Well, maybe we can add like a patio or something instead of just leaving it like an outdoor restaurant. We can have like a little nice balcony or patio sort of thing. And then we can shift right click somewhere over here and add a plane right. And we can just do SY, go into edit mode, E extrude it upwards, just like so. And we can use this, G Shift Z, as our mirror object instead. So use this as our mirror object. Cool, and now we're getting somewhere. Maybe we can copy this cutout cube and Shift S cursor to select it and make a little mini door here for our patio. Control minus, same thing like we did before. Then maybe we can add some, some sort of a fence here. So maybe we can select these, Shift D, duplicate, right click, cancel, piece separate by selection. Go into edit mode, GZ, and maybe just E and extrude this down just like so. Select this, Alt E, extrude along normals. By the way, if you're getting this really weird glitch where one is extruding this way and the other is extruding that way, it's probably because your normals are messed up. So just do Alt-N, recalculate outside, Alt-E, extrude along normals again, and it'll kind of just be like that. Super cool. Let's just apply our scale just to make sure, and let's just copy over one of these bevel modifiers, copy to selected, just like so. And then maybe we can add some little bit of something over here, so maybe Shift D, duplicate, right click, cancel, piece separate by selection, Q origin to geometry. Let's change this mirror object to this over here. Let's just go into edit mode. Let's do SY, just scale it down. Let's do E. And let's just extrude down that way, and let's just delete those faces and delete that face as well. And just like that, we can maybe bring this to the edge. Shift D duplicate. Shift D duplicate right there. RZ90. And we can do that over here as well. And just like that, we went from creative block, and now we're just experimenting, and we're actually getting something that doesn't really look that bad. And now I'm kind of getting a little bit bored with this. Maybe we should go to like our environment, for example. So let's make a quick tree. I'm going to go into add a single vertex, make sure you're in vertex select, and just, create like a small little cute little tree, just like the outline of it or whatever. Like so, it doesn't really matter what it is. If you want, you can add another vertex just like that with Control R like we did before. And this time we can give it a skin modifier, just like so. And it's really thick right now, but you can change the weight of how thick it is on each one with Control A. You can see I'm just selecting vertices, and I'm actually going to select all of them and just globally make them Control A, just a little bit smaller as of now. And I want to keep the trunk a little bit bigger than the rest of them, so I'm going to select that one. You don't have to see it in order to select it, just something like so. Cool, then we can do Control 2 to get a subdivision surface modifier on there real quick. And yeah, maybe just adjusts how this looks. And you can also turn on smooth shading here just to take a look at how it looks a little bit. So I'm just going to select that control. And now we can just add some bushes. I'm going to shift right click on a branch over here, and I'm just going to add a cube. Let's do Control 3 subdivision surface modifier. SX. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And let's just do shade smooth. And maybe duplicate it. Maybe make this one a little bit larger. Doesn't really matter. Just have fun with it and make a stylized tree. Then we can F3 convert to mesh. Quick way just to apply modifiers instead of Control A-ing two of them. Then we can go into sculpt mode, and let's change to our grab brush. Well, actually, let's make sure to apply our scale first. Now let's go into sculpt mode. And then let's just hit F to increase our brush a little bit. Let's make sure the fall off is smooth or smoother, something like so. And we can reduce the intensity a little bit. So I'm going to shift F, and that controls the intensity, and just kind of pull out and kind of like shape my stylized tree how I want it. And if you accidentally pull out too much here, you can see I kind of pulled out a little bit too much here. You can hold shift and it'll try and smooth out your pull. And that is by default also a tool right here called smooth. Now it starts at 0.7, which might be a little bit too strong, so just turn it down a little bit as well, like do the same thing. Then we can go back to grab. There's hotkeys for these, but it's easier just to collect there. And now you can see when I hold shift, it's a lot more mild, but it kind of like smooth it out. So if you ever like pull up so much, then you can just hold shift and kind of smooth it out a little bit. And since we're in the environment, maybe we can like make some rocks. So maybe let's create our first rock. I just added a plane. Maybe let's GG move this over here. Maybe add a loop cut somewhere over here. Maybe move this out. Actually, I want to move this one out too. We can have some, maybe we can have like a cool flat rock or something. I don't actually know what I'm doing, but we're just doing something, right? We're just doing something. Maybe we can make this a little bit back like that, maybe like that a little bit. Let's just do Control 2, add a subdivision surface modifier, just like so. And we got a pretty cool rock right there. Maybe we can add a loop cut here just to flatten that out just a little bit. That's a pretty cool rock, if I do say so myself. And then I can just make adjustments. Maybe we can make a pillar sort of stylized rock. Same thing, I'm gonna add a plane. Go into edit mode, extrude it up just like so. Maybe bring this up over here. Maybe add a loop cut here, bring this a little bit. Maybe we just twist it this way. Maybe let's bring these down a little bit. GZ. Cool, that looks pretty cool. Maybe add a guard loop here because I know it's already going to be. And there we have. Oh, that's like another rock. And then this looks a little bit arbitrary, so maybe we can just move these out randomly as well. And if you want that more defined edge, you can do what we did earlier. Shift E, increase the crease a little bit. Or in this case, you can just select the faces and give it an eye and inset. Effectively the same thing, and now you get a little bit of a harsher edge over there. And if it's still too perfect for you, feel free just to mess it up and create the rock how you want. And there, we just have some stylized rocks that we can play with and duplicate and edit over and over again. Don't know what else to do? Well, you can just make some simple objects. So maybe we can add like a plane, bring it up, RY90, and this will be like a really common frame that you see a lot. Let's apply our scale. Let's go into edit mode, extrude it out. Both faces on both sides, hit I, and then just do Control E, bridge edge loops, just like so. Then select one of these, Shift duplicate, right click, cancel, be separated by selection. Select it, Q, set origin to geometry, go into edit mode, hit E to extrude it. Then let's do GY and add an array modifier, just like so. And then it'll be in the Y axis. Crank that up. Cool, and now we can just copy over the bevel modifier, copy to selected, just like so. Sweet, and if you want to be able to modify this later and come back to it, you can just create a temporary empty. So what I'm going to do is come over here, go and select this face, Shift S cursor to selected, and then what I'm going to do is add an empty here. You can use a different kinds of empty. I'm going to use empty arrows, but you know, use whatever you want. I'm going to do SX-1 just so it's like this way. It doesn't really matter. And we can just select these, come over here, Control P, set object to object, and now if you just move the empty, it'll move both of these, and then this is still dynamic that you can adjust later if you want to, but here we just click on one object, or the empty object in this case. If you want to get rid of this parent later, you can just select both of these, Alt P, clear, and keep transformation, and now it's just by itself. You can just delete it just fine, just like that. But for now, I'm just going to leave it contained there. Okay, so I'm still building out my scene in trial and error. I'm not really showing this process because a lot of the models are really simple, but just to show you that I added a Tory gate, it's just a cylinder and then a bunch of extruded cubes with mirror modifiers and then a bunch of loop cuts and proportional editing to make it bend. This one, a small little trick, I used a rotated cube, and what I did is I added 2 loop cuts and then I did SXX and made this small, and then I just E and I locked it on the Z axis here, like so. And then do SZ0, and then I do Alt and just select the loop over there and select this P separated by selection, GXX, and then I have this thing over here that I can move along here. And then of course I want to fill this up again, so I'm going to hit F and just do that and get rid of that really quickly. And then here for this, you can see I just added array modifier in the X-axis, copy modifiers, and then I just Shift deduplicate for the next layer, and then just Alt S and scale it in on normals a little bit for the rail over there. And the stair is just an extruded plane downwards with an array modifier going up as well. So an urn is exactly what you think. It's just a circle. I think I'm just going to stick with 8 vertices. And let's just go into side view and let's just E extrude up. E, scale it, GZ maybe a little bit. E, scale it up, S, I don't know. I actually like this to be a little bit bigger. Doesn't really matter. E, Z, E one more time, and I'm going to scale this one down, and I'm going to E and Z, and then just scale it up. And once you get an urn shape that you like, honestly, you can make a variety of different urns just like this. You know, give it a subdivision, surface modifier, shade smooth, give it a solidify as well. Just plug that in there, just turn it up. And then maybe we can turn on even thickness. I don't think that's actually what I want. Let's apply our scale just to make sure it's fine. Oh yeah, it's not. So let's just tone that down just a little bit. Cool, and the bottom looks a little bit flat here. I think I'm actually just going to go into wireframe. Let me just come over here and I'm going to delete those vertices. Come over here and just hit F to fill that. And then scale it down just a little bit. Just like so. Yeah, that's looking like a better urn there. The really cool thing now is that you can make a variety of different, you know, vases just using this same base mesh. You can like GG to edge slide this, and now you have like some sort of vase like that. And you can scale this up a little bit, maybe add an edge loop over here and scale this up a little bit, and then add like a loop guard loop over here, something like that, and then you have like a completely different vase just based on that. And like you have so many varieties just based off of this one, which is really, really cool. Okay, so now I just want to talk a little bit about more roof techniques. So for this one, I did what we did earlier. I just used proportional editing with a subdivided plane. Now to make this, I actually didn't use the lattice modifier at all. I just built it from the mesh itself, which is another really common thing. I think I mentioned it earlier in the video, but just to show you again, I think I subdivided this one more time. I made a duplicate on place and then just hid the original object and then unhid it after. And then so here, I think I just started from, I think this one, and I would just hold shift, control, and I would skip every third one over here. It doesn't really matter, honestly, but you know, you get the gist there. And then you just select, you know, how many, oh, sorry, I missed that one over there. And then, yeah, just keep going down, and then shift deduplicate, and whoops, let me turn off proportional editing, GZ, P separated by selection. And we can do what we did the other time, so I'm going to get rid of that bevel modifier. We can convert this to a curve. And then I already have my curve objects over there, so I can, you probably can't see it on camera, but they're just squares there, right? and then you just do this, across the way, and that's how I got this. So I didn't really have to touch anything there. Same thing here. I just used a curve along the edge, just duplicated and brought it down over there. This is the same thing. I just used one of these bottom. I think I used this one over here, and I just shift duplicate, extrude down, P separate by selection, whatever. So that's how I made this roof. Nothing that we haven't covered yet. Now I want to talk about another approach for making roofs that are symmetrical across like all four sides. I don't know if there's like a term for that. And you probably actually might like this better than what I showed you with, this thing over here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is probably, well, I might as well start here. Shift duplicate, right click, P separate by selection, Q origin to geometry. So now we have a plane here. Let's go and hit control period just to move this. GY and snap it over there so the pivot point is over there. It honestly doesn't matter. Some people like working, control period to confirm that. Some people like working with it directly at the origin, which you can do if you want to turn on incremental snapping. It'll like snap to there. But for me, it doesn't really matter that much whether I'm working from the origin or not. Anyway, now you can just rotate like RX45 or whatever axes you prefer to work with, and just like so. And now you can just come here and subdivide it a few times. So I feel like that's okay. And then maybe let's just stretch it, however wide you want it to be. So you can just stretch it like SX. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So now we're just gonna do the same thing we did last time, hit K, and it'll just be at a 45-degree angle. So it should be fine when we rotate around the axis. And now we can just go into circle select and do the same thing. We can use a mirror modifier here so we don't have to do the same thing on both sides, but honestly it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to select everything. I'm going to delete those vertices. And now I'm just going to select these edges over here, turn on proportional editing with O, and just bring it up over here. And then I'm going to do it again, but this time I'm going to use a larger sphere of influence. Cool. Right click, shade smooth, and I think I'm going to move it a little bit more up actually. So now all we have to do is hit Alt D to create an instance of it. Then without clicking or confirming anything, RZ90 and hit enter. And then we can do Shift R to repeat our last action. And there we have it. So now if we adjust this one in edit mode, SX, you can see it's going to adjust the other ones, and we can just scale it along here until it snaps together. So if yours is like this, well, you can just scale it up until it gets a little bit. And you can leave that little bit of gap and cover it up with something else. If you want to, you can also use a mirror modifier. So let me show you that. If I go GX over here, then come over here, cursor to selected, and I'll add like an empty here. So I'll just do a plain axis over here, and then I'll give it a mirror modifier like here. I'm going to select this empty along the Y. I'm going to do the same thing, Shift D, and then I'll do RZ90, and this time I'm going to do it on the X. And then we kind of have that. We pretty much have the same thing over here. But yeah, if you want them to be merged, you can just scale it up until they overlap pretty closely. And then when you're done, you can just join them together as a single object. Go into edit mode, merge by distance, and just crank this up a little bit. And it's looking messed up because I had shade smooth, so right click shade auto smooth, and you can see now we have this. I don't feel like you have to combine it, but if you want to, you can. But yeah, that's another really nice, easy, and quick way to create a roof. Now, before you cut it up and do what we did, there's actually another Blender add-on that you can use instead that's pretty common to use for Japanese roof tiles, and that's called the Tissue Blender add-on over here. Now, if you're into geometry nodes, you could probably do a geometry node setup as well, but that's a little bit more advanced. But this tissue add-on, it's free, and it's pretty popular for things like this. So here you can see I just have a cylinder with 14 vertices and just extruded out one of the sides. And if I select this object, hold shift and select this object, and just hit tessellate and hit OK, you can see it's going to tessellate this mesh over there, and it'll keep the original one, which is really nice actually. Now it's a little bit messed up because this is rotated 90 degrees. So you can go in edit mode and RX90 and rotate it that way, or you can just come over here and Control A, apply rotation. And now if I do it again and hit tessellate, you can see that we're going to have, it tessellate for all the subdivided areas along this cube over here. So each one of these is like one of those pretty much. And you can do it for a lot of things. So here's another one. This is just a plane with an extruded thing. And I'm just going to hit tessellate. And it looks pretty cool as well. You are getting a little bit of distortion, but depending on how you angle it, it probably won't be noticeable as well. And you can leave the plane flat, tessellated, and then bend it just to help you manage your distortion. And of course, you can always adjust it after. But yeah, now you can just adjust it how you want. So maybe delete those vertices, fill in those sides if you want to, cut it diagonally, you know, whatever angle you want to cut it, and, you know, just have fun, use the mirror modifier. And the really, really cool, awesome thing about this is like if the gap is too large at the top, you can always just like do GY or something. And then you can just like grab one of these and then just GX, right? And then now you have like a smaller gap on the top. And then of course you can always like do extrude. So I can do like EY. And then after I apply all my modifiers, they'll be overlapping. So I can just merge by distance and it'll get rid of all the overlapping faces as well. So I don't even have to worry about that either. So it's super cool and it's just like super fun. Again, these are also instances. So if I adjust one over here, it's going to adjust across all of them. And I just think that's really, really cool. But just to show you how I got here, basically what I did was I had this and I kind of wanted like a flat spot up there. So all I did was I took all the vertices on this side and I'm just doing it messy now, but you know, make it a little bit better. And I'm just basically what I'm doing is creating that edge, that taper on the side. So, and then this one, I'm actually going to delete that vertice. And I don't need this side, so we can just delete that vertice real quick. And now we can add a mirror modifier here, just like so. And I don't like how this topology looks. Honestly, it's not a big deal if you leave this in. But I like cleaning up a little bit, so I'm just going to lock this on the y-axis and cut that, hit spacebar to confirm that. Same thing here, but this is a little bit diagonal, but honestly, I don't really care that much. It's just because we moved the vertices wrong, but I'm just going to match it up with the vertice over there. Cool, just confirm that as well. And now we can just select these diagonals, Control X to dissolve them. I mean, you still have tries and everything, so it's not perfect anyway, whether you clean up or not, but it just looks a little bit better. And when you eventually make a duplicate of it to subdivide, like over here to create your poles, you're gonna have more of these to work with. So to create a path, I'm just gonna control right click to extrude my plane, you know, wherever I want it, the path to go. So maybe something like this. And one of my path that I like, I'm just going to subdivide it maybe once. Cool. And then I'm just gonna use the knife tool and just kind of like slice through my object. So I'm just clicking and slicing through. And when I'm done, I'm just gonna hit spacebar to confirm all those. And then now what we can do is hit Alt M to split everything along their edges, so faces by edges here. And then we can hit P by loose parts. Now everything becomes its own individual mesh. We can go back to object mode and do origin to geometry. Then we can change our scaling from bounding box center to individual origins, which you can also turn up here as well. And then we can just scale it down on their individual origins. Go into edit mode, E, and just extrude them off just like so. And then if I go into render view, let's just control L. Link materials, deselect this with control. Let's select one of these, go into edit mode, hit A. Let's just smart UV project, unwrap, and just scale it up until we get something that we like. Grain size that we like.